I should have known better than to deliver flowers to a house that didn't exist. The address on the card read 14 West Elm Street. But the numbers on this Maple Street stopped at 12. Rain hammered down like bullets, turning the cobblestones into rivers, and I was already 2 hours behind schedule. The arrangement in my passenger seat, white lilies, blue hydrangeas, silver dollar eucalyptus, cost more than I made in a week. My boss, Marco, would dock my entire paycheck if I came back with it, so I did what any desperate florist would do. I knocked on the door of the only house that could be right, the stone mansion at the end of the street with no number at all. The man who answered wore a suit that cost more than my car and had eyes, like a winter storm. Rain plastered his dark hair against his skull, but he didn't seem to notice. He looked at the flowers, then at me, and something in his expression calcified. "Who sent these?" His voice was quiet. Too quiet. "San Remo Funeral Home," I said, my arms shaking from holding the heavy arrangement. "For the Rossi family. I'm sorry, the address must be... There is no Rossi family. Not anymore." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hollowed out. "My wife died this morning." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there in the pouring rain, holding sympathy flowers for a dead woman, staring at a widower I'd found by accident, and I couldn't think of a single adequate thing to say. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. He reached for the arrangement. His fingers brushed mine, and I felt a callus on his thumb that didn't match the expensive suit. A fighter's callus. A working man's hands in a rich man's clothes. "Come inside," he said. Not a request. "You're freezing." I should have refused. Should have apologized and driven away. But there was something magnetic about his grief. Something that made saying no feel impossible. The foyer was all marble and shadows, like walking into a cathedral. He set the flowers on a table that probably cost more than everything I owned and turned to face me. Water pooled at my feet, ruining his perfect floor. "Your name?" he asked. Elena Vance." "Elena?" He tasted the word. "Tell me, do you believe in signs?" The question caught me entirely off guard. "I believe in mistakes, and I think this delivery was one." He stepped into my path with the fluid grace of a predator. 3 hours ago, my wife took her last breath upstairs. Cancer. I ordered no flowers. I wanted no condolences. Yet here you are in my home, with lilies that smell, like death and a card with no sender, his slate-gray eyes locked onto mine. This doesn't feel like a mistake to me. My phone buzzed. Marco, probably wondering where I was. "Sir, I really need to get back." "Gianluca," he interrupted. "My name is Gianluca Rossi, and you're not leaving until we understand why you're here." It wasn't a threat. It was simply a fact, delivered with the same quiet certainty as everything else he said. My phone buzzed again. And again, Gianluca stepped aside just enough for me to see the door. "Your employer can wait," he said. "I need to understand this." He reached for the card tucked into the arrangement, his fingers moving with surprising delicacy. I wanted to look away, to give him privacy, but his expression as he read, carefully blank, like a man trying not to show pain, kept my eyes locked on his face. The card fluttered from his fingers to the marble floor. I caught a glimpse of the message in elegant script. The wrong flowers for the bad wife, but perhaps the right messenger. Gianluca's head snapped up. "Who wrote this?" "I don't know." My voice came out smaller than I intended. "The orders come in digitally. I never see who sends them." He picked up the card again, holding it as if it might explode. "Get out of those wet clothes. I'll have something brought down. You're staying until I understand this." "I'm not staying." The words came out with more force than I felt. "I have a job. I have a life." "You can," he interrupted. "And you will because someone sent you here." "Elena, someone sent you to me on the day my wife died, with flowers I didn't order and a message that suggests they know more about my business than they should. Until I know who that someone is, you're the only lead I have." He was right. I hated that he was right. 1 hour, I said, my voice shaking. "Then I'm leaving." Gianluca smiled for the first time. It didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see." "Kain dain mom." The clothes that arrived fit perfectly. A cashmere sweater in deep burgundy, silk soft leggings and wool socks that warmed my frozen feet. Someone had been paying very close attention to my body while I stood there shivering. The thought made my skin prickle. When I emerged, Gianluca was waiting in a study that smelled of leather and old money. He'd changed into a dry shirt and lost the jacket. The absence of that armor made him seem fractionally more human. Better? He asked. Confused, I corrected. This is kidnapping. I prefer to think of it as protective custody. He gestured to a leather chair. Sit, please. The please was purely decorative. I sat. Tell me everything, he said, from the moment you received this order. I told him about Marco handing me the slip, about the rain, about the address that didn't exist. He listened without interrupting, his eyes cataloging every micro-expression on my face. And you didn't recognize the name Rossi? He asked when I finished. I moved here from Verona 6 months ago. I don't know the important families. A flicker of dark amusement crossed his face. We're not important. We're necessary. That's a strange distinction. Is it? He leaned back. My family has controlled the port of Naples for 3 generations. We ensure certain goods move smoothly. We ensure certain complications don't arise. We are necessary for the city's economy to function. You mean your criminals? Was your job? He caught my arm, firm but not cruel. Now it's a crime scene. And you're a witness. I pulled free. I'm going. Elena. Just my name, but the authority in it stopped me cold. You walk into that, the police will question you. They'll want to know why you left, why you didn't answer your phone, and why Marco's last delivery was to a house that doesn't officially exist. You'll give them answers they won't understand, about a man they already suspect, and then you'll be in the middle of a war you can't win. A war? What war? He looked at me like I was being deliberately obtuse. The war someone just declared by sending you to my door and burning down your livelihood. This wasn't random. This was a message. To whom? To me and to you. He gestured at the smoke. They want you isolated. They want you scared. They want you to have nowhere to go but here. The truth hit me like cold water. I looked at the burning shop, at the flashing lights in the distance, at the life I'd built in 6 months turning to ash. Who would do this? I whispered. Rivals, enemies, people who think I'm weak because my wife died. He said it without emotion. They made their first mistake this afternoon when they sent you. They made their second mistake tonight when they thought fire would scare me. What was the first mistake? Underestimating what I would do to keep you safe. He turned to Luca. Take 3 men. Make sure the fire doesn't spread, and find out who called it in. I want to know who was watching. Luca left. Gianluca turned back to me. Inside now. This time I obeyed. The house felt different now. Less like a museum, more like a fortress. He led me to a kitchen of stainless steel and dark wood, poured 2 glasses of whiskey and pushed one toward me. Drink. I don't drink. I drank. The liquid burned, cutting through the shock. Now, he said, you tell me everything about your life before Naples. Every detail. Someone chose you for a reason. I need to know why. So I told him. About growing up in Verona, about my mother's flower shop, about learning the language of blooms. Red roses for passion and apology, white lilies for sympathy and rebirth. I told him about my father's gambling debts that swallowed our family business, about coming to Naples to start over, about Marco giving me a chance when no one else would. He listened, his eyes never leaving my face. And I had the feeling he wasn't just hearing my words. He was cataloging them, cross-referencing them, searching for the thread that would lead him to whoever had pulled me into this. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the counter and took my hand. The gesture was so unexpected, I didn't pull away. White lilies, he said softly. You said they mean rebirth. Yes, my wife is dead. There's no rebirth from that. Maybe not for her? I spoke without thinking. But for you. His fingers tightened on mine. Careful, Elena. You don't know what you're offering. I'm not offering anything. I'm just here, because someone made me be here. Are you? He released my hand and stepped back. Or are you exactly where you're supposed to be? The question hung heavy between us. My phone buzzed. Not Marco this time. An unknown number. I showed Gianluca the screen. Answer it, he said. Speaker. I did. A voice came through, distorted by a modulator. Elena Vance, I hope you're enjoying your new accommodations. Gianluca moved so fast I barely saw it. He had the phone against his ear in one motion. Who is this? The voice laughed. The man who sent you a gift. Don Rossi. A beautiful woman on the day of your wife's passing. Consider it a gesture of respect, and a reminder that even in your grief, you are not untouchable. The line went dead. Gianluca's hand clenched around the phone until I heard plastic crack. When he looked at me, the grief was gone from his eyes, replaced by something colder and infinitely more dangerous. "Well," he said softly, "now we know." "Know what?" "That you weren't a mistake." He dropped the ruined phone on the counter. "You were a gift, and in my world gifts come with strings." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Get some sleep, Elena. Tomorrow we start pulling those strings. And I promise you, whoever is on the other end won't like what they find." I stood alone in the kitchen, listening to his footsteps fade. My phone was broken. My life was burning a mile away, and I was wearing a dead woman's clothes in a killer's house, waiting for a war I hadn't asked for to begin. The lilies sat on the foyer table, their white petals glowing in the dim light. Rebirth, I'd said. I wondered if I even believed it anymore. The room they gave me overlooked a garden that belonged in a dream. Expensive furniture, neutral colors, a bed like sleeping on a cloud. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the darkness, waiting for dawn or disaster. At 5 a.m. there was a soft knock. Luca entered with coffee, pastries, and a newspaper. He set the tray down without a word. "Wait," I said. "What's happening?" "Boss has been in his office all night." Luca hesitated, then added, "You should eat. You'll need your strength." "For what?" "For whatever comes next." He left. I turned to the newspaper. The front page showed Bella Rosa Florist, what was left of it. The headline read, "Suspicious fire destroys local business. Owner missing." Missing. Marco wasn't missing. He was where? I threw on yesterday's clothes, still damp, and made my way downstairs. The house was waking. Staff moved like ghosts through the halls, giving me quick, assessing glances. The new girl, the uncertainty. Gianluca's office was behind double doors at the end of a long hallway. I knocked, no answer. I knocked harder. Enter. The room was dark except for the computer screens. Gianluca sat behind a massive desk, a glass of amber liquid at his elbow. He looked like he hadn't moved since last night. "Marco's missing," I said without preamble. "I know. Do you know where he is?" "Not yet." He gestured to a chair. "Sit." I sat. "If you've done something to him." "I haven't." He cut me off. "But whoever burned his shop might have. Or he's hiding, or he's dead." He said it so matter-of-factly that I flinched. "Welcome to my world, Elena. People disappear. The only question is whether you're the reason or the consequence. I'm neither. I'm a florist. You're whatever I need you to be." He pushed a file across the desk. "Luca pulled your records clean, too clean. No debts, no arrests, no connections to any families. You really are just a girl from Verona who arranges flowers. That's what I've been telling you. Which makes you perfect." He opened the file, revealing surveillance photos of me, at the shop, at my apartment, walking through markets. "You're invisible. No one looks at the florist. No one suspects the girl delivering lilies." I stared at the photos, cold dread settling in my stomach. "How long have you been watching me?" "Since yesterday. When I realized you were a gift, I had to understand the giver." He closed the file. "But the more I learn, the less sense it makes. Why would someone send me an innocent? Maybe they made a mistake. People in my business don't make mistakes like that. They make statements." He stood and walked to the window. "Someone wants me distracted. Someone wants me focused on you instead of them. Who? Whoever benefits from my grief." He turned back. "My wife's death leaves a vacuum. There are people who would like to fill it." I thought about the modulated voice on the phone. The careful words. The man who called said it was a gesture of respect. Disrespecting wearing respect's clothing. Gianluca returned to his desk. "I need you to do something for me. I've already done enough. Not by choice. This time I'm asking." He leaned forward. "I need you to send flowers." I laughed, sharp and desperate. "You want me to do my job? Now?" "I want you to do what you're good at. Send an arrangement to every major player in the city. Same arrangement. White lilies, blue hydrangeas, silver eucalyptus. The card reads, 'From the Rossi family with gratitude for your condolences.'" That's a message. Exactly. I want to see who responds. Who calls to ask why? Who knows about the flowers before they arrive? Someone out there thinks they're clever, using my wife's death to manipulate me. I want them to know I'm not grieving. "I'm hunting." I stared at him. "You want to use me as bait. I want to use you as a mirror. You'll reflect back exactly who is watching." He came around the desk. "You'll be safe. Luca will be with you every moment." "Luca terrifies me." "Good, he should." He stopped. close enough that I could smell whiskey and clean cotton. Elena, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for my wife to die. I didn't ask for you, but here we are, and I can't let you go until I know why. And if I refuse, then you walk out that door and I can't protect you. Whoever sent you will think you failed them, or worse, that you betrayed them. Either way, you're a liability they can't afford. He touched my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. The gesture was gentle, but his words were steel. I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you how this works. I closed my eyes. Thought about Marco, about the shop, about my tiny apartment, and the quiet life I'd been trying to build. Then I thought about Gianluca's eyes when he talked about his wife. The grief is buried under layers of control. Fine, I whispered. One arrangement. That's it. One arrangement to start. I opened my eyes. That's not what we agreed. We're not agreeing on anything. We're surviving. He dropped his hand. Luca will take you to the shop. We have a temporary setup in the back. You'll make the arrangements there. You'll send them, and you'll watch. Watch what? Watch who watches you. Kain dain mo. 2 hours later, I stood in a makeshift flower shop in the back of a warehouse that smelled of gasoline and secrets. The flowers were the same quality as Marco's, the tools familiar. But the man leaning against the wall, watching my every move with dead eyes, made everything different. I started with the lilies, stripping leaves, cutting stems at angles. The work was meditative, the one thing that made sense in this chaos. As I worked, I thought about the original message, the wrong flowers for the bad wife. But perhaps the right messenger. Whoever wrote it had known about the flowers and had known about Gianluca's wife, had known he would be alone, grieving, vulnerable, and they had sent me, a stranger, to walk into that moment. Why? As I finished the first arrangement, my phone, replaced by Luca with a new secure device, buzzed. A text from Gianluca. First delivery goes to Antonio Moretti. Via Toledo 47, oversee him. I looked at Luca. Let's go. Antonio Moretti ran a cafe where older men played cards and tourists paid too much for espresso. He was in his 60s with a face like weathered stone and eyes that missed nothing. When I walked in with the lilies, his expression didn't change. Not one muscle. Delivery for Antonio Moretti, I said, setting the arrangement on the counter. He looked at the flowers, then at me, then at Luca by the door. From the Rossi family. With gratitude for your condolences. I sent no condolences. The card says otherwise. He picked up the small envelope and opened it. His eyes scanned Gianluca's simple note of thanks. I watched his hands, steady, too steady. A man receiving unexpected flowers from a grieving donor should show surprise. He showed none. Tell Don Rossi I appreciate the gesture, he said carefully. His family remains in my prayers. I nodded and left. Outside, Luca fell into step beside me. Well, he knew, I said. He wasn't surprised. He was waiting. Luca grunted and typed into his phone. We moved to the next delivery, a leather goods shop owned by Franco De Luca. Same routine, same card. Franco's hands trembled when he took it, and he couldn't meet my eyes. He's scared, I reported, terrified of whatever this means. By the 5th delivery, I had a pattern. Some recipients were calm, prepared. Others were nervous, twitchy. One, a woman who ran a boutique near the Spanish Quarter, actually tried to refuse the flowers. I can't accept this, she whispered, glancing around like the walls had ears. Please tell Don Rossi I meant no disrespect. By not sending condolences? I asked. She paled. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. But her eyes said otherwise. She'd known, and she'd chosen silence. In Gianluca's world, silence was a statement. We made 12 deliveries. By the end, my arms ached, but my mind was racing. I was mapping a network of loyalties and betrayals, all expressed through who had sent flowers and who hadn't, who was prepared and who was afraid. Back at the warehouse, Gianluca was waiting. He'd set up whiteboards, and as I reported each reaction, he wrote names, connecting them with colored lines. Blue for calm, red for scared, green for refusers. Antonio Moretti, he said, tapping the blue line. He's with them. He knew this was coming. Franco De Luca, scared because he didn't send condolences, and now he's been called out. Carlotta, he paused. She's a wild card. You're building a map, I said, realizing. A map of your enemies. A map of who thinks I'm weak. He stepped back, surveying the board. Someone told them my wife died. Someone organized them, Someone wanted them to know I was vulnerable. And the flowers? The flowers tell me who listened. He turned to me. You did well today. You saw what I needed you to see. I'm a florist, not a spy. You're whatever I need you to be. He said it without emphasis, but the words branded themselves into my skin. Tomorrow we do it again, but this time different flowers. Different how? Roses, red ones, to the same people. The card will read, for those who stood with us in our time of need. We stand with you in yours. I saw the trap immediately. You're testing them. The roses will mean something different to the loyal versus the plotting. Exactly. He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. You're learning. That night, I dreamed of flowers. White lilies turning to blood-red roses, their thorns growing longer, sharper. I dreamed of Gianluca's hands, calloused and gentle, stripping leaves and cutting stems. I dreamed of Marco, somewhere in darkness, his face obscured by smoke. I woke to a sound in the hallway. Footsteps, soft, careful, not Luca's heavy tread, not Gianluca's confident stride. Lighter, stealthier, I lay frozen, listening. The footsteps stopped outside my door. The handle turned slowly, silently. My heart hammered. I had no weapon, no defense, just flowers and foolish belief. The door opened a crack. A figure slipped inside, small, quick. A woman. She closed the door behind her and stood in the darkness, breathing hard. Elena? She whispered. Elena Vance? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Please, she said, her voice breaking. I need your help. My name is Isabella Rossi, and I'm not dead. Kein dein Mom. The woman moved into the moonlight from the window. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35. With dark hair and delicate features that spoke of old money and careful breeding. She was also very much alive. You're supposed to be dead, I whispered. That's what Gianluca told everyone. She sat on the edge of my bed, hands trembling. He had to. It was the only way to keep me safe. Safe from what? From him. She saw my confusion. Not Gianluca. The man who tried to kill me. The man who wants his territory, his power, everything. Gianluca faked my death to draw him out. I sat up, pulling blankets around me like armor. You need to leave. Right now. If Gianluca finds you, he already knows I'm here. She smiled, sad and knowing. This is his house. Nothing happens without his knowledge. He let me in. The door opened. Gianluca stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking almost human. He looked at Isabella, then at me, and nodded. She needs to understand, Isabella said. She will. Gianluca crossed to the window and pulled the curtains shut. But she won't like it. I looked between them, this man whose wife had died this morning and this woman who was supposed to be that wife. The pieces weren't fitting. They were from different puzzles entirely. Someone tried to poison me 3 months ago, Isabella said quietly. Slow acting, cumulative. Gianluca found out through his sources. He couldn't prove who did it, but he knew it was someone close. Someone in the family. So you, what, pretended to die? We turned my illness into a weapon. Gianluca turned from the window. Isabella's cancer was the cover story. We let it be known she was dying and made it look real. Doctors, treatments, the whole performance. This morning, she took her last breath, medically induced. The doctor who pronounced her dead is ours. The body that left this house was a corpse from the morgue, dressed in Isabella's clothes. I felt sick. That's insane. That's survival. Isabella reached for my hand. We needed the traitor to believe he'd won, to get comfortable, to make his next move, and that move was me. The flowers, Gianluca said. The message, designed to reach me at my most vulnerable, to see if I would crack, if I were to make mistakes. And did you? His eyes met mine. I let you in. That could have been a mistake, but it wasn't. No. He sat on the other side of the bed, creating a strange triangle. Because you saw what I needed you to see. You delivered those flowers, watched, and told me who was prepared and who was scared. You gave me a map of my enemies. I pulled my hand from Isabella's grasp. You used me. We protected you, she corrected. The fire at Marco's shop? That was real. That was the traitor eliminating loose ends. If you'd been there, you'd be dead. Gianluca brought you here to keep you safe. Safe? I laughed harshly. I'm in a Mafia boss's house. His not-dead wife just appeared in my bedroom. And you're telling me I'm safe? You're safer here than anywhere else, Gianluca said. Because now you're under my protection, and the man who thinks he killed my wife knows it. Isabella stood. I'll give you two a moment. She moved to the door, then paused. Elena, I know this is overwhelming, but Gianluca trusts you. That's not something he gives lightly. She left, closing the door softly. I turned on Gianluca. How could you do this to her? To yourself? How could I not? He stood, pacing like a caged animal. Someone in my own organization tried to kill my wife, someone I trusted. I couldn't prove it, couldn't move against them without starting a war, so I created a scenario where they would show their hand, by faking her death, by giving them exactly what they wanted. He stopped pacing. And it worked. They sent you? They sent a message. They think I'm broken, distracted, vulnerable. And are you? He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw truth stripped bare. Yes, but not for the reasons they think. I didn't ask what that meant. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Tomorrow, he said. Isabella will be buried. The funeral will be private, family only. And you will be there. Why? Because the traitor will be there. And I was hoping you could watch them as you did the flower recipients. I need you to tell me who doesn't belong. I'm not a detective. No, you're better. You're invisible. People say things around florists they wouldn't say around cops. He moved closer. You have a gift, Elena. You read people. You see what they hide. I've watched you do it. That's not a gift. That's survival. Then survive this. He was close enough that I could feel the heat from his body. Help me find the person who tried to kill my wife. Help me end this, and I'll give you a life you never imagined. That's a big promise. It's a bigger threat. His voice dropped. Because if you don't help me, the person who sent you will come for you. They'll think you're working for me. They'll think you know something. And you will. Because I'm going to tell you everything. I looked up at him. At this man who had lost so much and was willing to lose more to get justice. I thought about Marco. About the shop. About the life that was already ash. I thought about the way Gianluca's hand had felt on mine. The way he'd looked at me like I was the answer to a question he hadn't asked yet. Everything? I whispered. Everything. He cupped my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. Starting with why I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at those lilies and saw rebirth instead of death. The door opened. Luca stood there, face grim. Boss, problem. The funeral home just called. Isabella's body has been stolen. Gianluca's hand dropped. What? Someone broke into the morgue an hour ago. Took the corpse. Left a note. Luca held out a piece of paper. Gianluca took it, read it. His knuckles went white. He handed it to me. The note was short, written in block letters. I know she's not dead. I want the real one. You have 24 hours. The house went into lockdown in seconds. Gianluca moved through the halls like a general deploying troops, barking orders in rapid Italian. Luca shadowed him, a silent pillar of violence waiting for direction. Isabella was hustled to a safe room I hadn't known existed. I was supposed to stay put. That lasted until noon when Gianluca found me in the kitchen making coffee for men who looked like they hadn't slept in days. You should be resting, he said, taking the pot from my hands. Resting won't bring Marco back. Or stop whoever this is. No, but it will keep you sharp for tonight. What's tonight? The funeral. He poured 2 cups and handed me one. Isabella's funeral. The real one, with the empty casket and the grieving widower. You need to be there. And you need to be ready. Ready for what? For anything. His phone buzzed. He checked it, expression darkening. The first guest has arrived early. Antonio Moretti, the man you said was calm when he got the lilies. He's one of them. Yes, and he's here to test how broken I am. He set his coffee down. Come with me. The funeral was held in the family. Chapel on the grounds, a small stone. Building that looked ancient and permanent. Mourners gathered in black, their faces carefully arranged into sympathy. I stood to the side in a simple black dress that had appeared in my room. Watching them arrive, Gianluca stood by the casket, beautiful, empty, polished mahogany and brass. He played the grieving widower perfectly, accepting condolences with stoic nods, his eyes dry but his posture defeated. It was a masterclass in performance. I watched Antonio Moretti approach. He took Gianluca's hand, leaned in close, and said something I couldn't hear. Gianluca's expression didn't change, but his shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. Then Antonio turned to me. You must be the florist. he said, voice smooth as silk. The one who brought the lilies. I nodded, unsure what to say. Beautiful arrangement. Don Rossi has always had excellent taste. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. Tell me, did you choose the flowers yourself? Or were they ordered specifically? The order came from the funeral home, I said, the lie clumsy on my tongue. Of course, he patted my hand. Such a difficult time for everyone. He moved away. I felt Gianluca's gaze on me. I gave a tiny shake of my head. Antonio knew. He knew the flowers were a message, and he was testing to see if I understood it. The service began. A priest spoke in Latin, voice echoing off stone walls. I stood in the back, watching faces instead of listening to words. I saw fear, curiosity, calculation, but most of all relief. These people believed Isabella was dead, and they were relieved because it meant Gianluca was weakened. Midway through the service, Gianluca's phone vibrated. He checked it discreetly, then looked at me, a tiny nod toward the door. I slipped out. Luca was waiting. The morgue called. They found something in the stolen corpse's clothing. A tracking device. Someone wanted you to find it? Someone wanted us to know they could get that close. Luca's expression was grim. Boss wants you in the security room now. The security room was a wall of monitors showing every angle of the property. Gianluca stood before them, tie loosened, jacket gone. Watch, he said, pointing to a monitor showing the chapel interior. Tell me what you see. I watched the mourners, the way they sat, and whispered to each other. The man in the third row left side. He's not watching you. He's watching Antonio. Gianluca leaned in. Go on. He's nervous. Keeps touching his left pocket. That's where he'd keep a weapon. He's not here to mourn. He's here to protect. Or to witness. Gianluca typed something. The camera zoomed in. The man's face filled the screen. That's Marco's brother. The one who works for Antonio. My blood ran cold. Marco's brother is here? Marco's brother set the fire. And Marco, he's not missing, Elena. He's in protective custody. He called me yesterday after you left the shop. He knew something was wrong with that order. He tried to warn me, but they got to him first. So he's safe? He's safe. Gianluca turned to me. But you were right. Marco didn't know anything. He was just a florist trying to do his job. They burned his shop to punish him for being careful. And to isolate me. Yes. He looked back at the monitors. They wanted you here with me. They wanted me to trust you, to confide in you, to make you part of my world. Why? Because the best way to kill a king is to give him something he loves. His eyes met mine in the monitor's reflection. And then take it away. The service was ending. Mourners filed out. Antonio Moretti stopped to speak to Gianluca one last time. Hand on Gianluca's shoulder and false comfort. Watch his left hand, I said suddenly. He's passing something. Gianluca zoomed the camera. In the split second before Antonio's hand dropped away, we saw it. A small folded note, tucked into Gianluca's jacket pocket. Gianluca reached for the pocket and pulled out the note. Unfolded it. The message was short. She's not in the ground. She's in the house. I can smell her perfume. The house went into emergency protocol before I could process what I'd read. Gianluca moved like a storm, issuing orders. Luca shadowed him. I was told to go to my room and stay there, but I followed anyway, curiosity overriding fear. She's not using her perfume, Gianluca was saying as we reached the safe room. She knows better. How could he? The door to the safe room stood open. Isabella was gone. Luca cursed, low and violent. Gianluca went still. That dangerous stillness I'd seen before. Then he turned to me, and the look in his eyes made me step back. Find her, he said. Use your gift. Find her. I don't... Yes, you do. He grabbed my shoulders, grip almost painful. You read people. You see what they hide. Someone took her. Someone who knows this house, knows our routines, knows where the safe room is. That means inside help. Find the help. I wanted to argue. But his desperation was palpable, crawling under his skin. This wasn't about strategy anymore. This was about the woman he loved. Show me the staff quarters, I said. Luca led us to the back of the house, to rooms where live-in staff stayed. Most were off duty. We searched room by room, looking for anything out of place. In the housekeeper's room, I found it. A small bottle of perfume, tucked in a drawer. Isabella's scent is distinctive and expensive. The housekeeper, Rosa, was nowhere to be found. She's been with us for 15 years, Luca said, voice tight. She helped raise Isabella. 15 years is a long time to build loyalty, I said. Or resentment. Gianluca appeared in the doorway, phone to his ear. Rosa's not answering. Her car is gone. She took Isabella, I said. But she didn't leave the property. The gates would have logged her exit. Gianluca checked his phone. No log, they're still here. Then where? The answer came from outside, a car horn blaring from the garage. We ran. The garage was a separate building housing Gianluca's collection of vehicles. Inside, Rosa stood by a black SUV with the door open. Isabella sat in the passenger seat, hands bound, mouth gagged. Rosa held a gun, not pointed at Isabella, but held loosely at her side, like she wasn't sure what to do with it. Rosa, Gianluca said, voice soft. What are you doing? He promised me. Don Rossi. He promised my grandson would be safe. Tears streamed down her face. They took him yesterday. Said they'd kill him if I didn't bring her to them. Who? The man from Palermo. Lombardo. She gestured with the gun. Not threatening, just desperate. He said she was already dead. He said it wasn't really her. He said, I know what he said. Gianluca took a step forward. And I know you love your grandson. But Rosa, if you do this, no one is safe. Not him, not you, not anyone. I saw the moment she broke. Her shoulders sagged and the gun drooped. But before Gianluca could reach her, a shot rang out. Not from Rosa's gun. From outside. The bullet caught Rosa in the shoulder. She screamed, dropped the gun. Luca moved like lightning, pulling her from the car and shielding her with his body. Gianluca rushed to Isabella, cut her bonds, and removed her from the vehicle. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching as more shots peppered the garage. Gianluca shoved Isabella behind a concrete pillar, then turned to me. Get down! I dropped as a bullet shattered the window above my head. Glass rained down. I covered my head, heart hammering so hard I couldn't hear anything else. Then silence, the kind that comes after violence, heavy and ringing. Gianluca crawled to me, hand on my back. Are you hit? No, my voice shook. I'm fine. He pulled me to my feet, pushed me behind the pillar with Isabella. She was crying silently, makeup smeared but alive. Luca, Gianluca called. Clear, Luca shouted back. Shooter's gone. Rosa's hit, but it's clean. She'll live. Gianluca nodded, then turned to me. His hands cupped my face, thumbs wiping away tears I hadn't realized I was crying. You found her. Barely. You found her. He repeated it, voice fierce. You saw what we missed. You saw the perfume. It was obvious. Not to us. He leaned his forehead against mine. To you it was obvious. That's your gift. Isabella made a sound between a laugh and a sob. Gianluca, let the girl breathe. He pulled back, but his eyes stayed on mine. You're not leaving, ever. Do you understand? I understood. I understood I'd just been shot at. I understood I'd helped save a woman who was supposed to be dead. I understood I was now deeply, irretrievably involved in a war I hadn't signed up for. But most of all, I understood that when Gianluca Rossi looked at me like I was his anchor in a storm, I didn't want to leave. Yes, I whispered. I understand. He kissed me then, hard, fast, a seal of promise in the middle of chaos. Good, because tomorrow we end this. How? He smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf. We send flowers to Palermo, and this time the message won't be subtle. The arrangement I made that night was unlike anything I'd ever created. Black roses. Difficult to find, expensive, their meaning clear. Death. White calla lilies for resurrection and rebirth, and in the center, a single perfect bird of paradise, vibrant and defiant. The card read for Lombardo, who sends his regards through older women and bullets. Here is our reply. Gianluca watched me work, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You understand the symbolism. I understand that flowers are a language. You're declaring war, but you're doing it with style. Style matters in my world. It says you have the resources to be elegant, while being ruthless. He picked up the bird of paradise. And this? That says you're not afraid. That says you're still standing. He set it down gently. You're still wearing the earrings I gave you. My hand went to my ear, to the diamond that was also a panic button. I haven't had a reason to use them. Let's hope you never do. He moved closer, presence filling the workspace. Tomorrow you and I deliver this ourselves. To Palermo. To his doorstep. He wants a show of weakness. We'll give him a show of strength. The next morning we took a helicopter. I'd never been in one before. The world fell away beneath us. Naples shrinking to a toy city, the sea spreading out like blue glass. Gianluca sat beside me, hand on my knee, constant and grounding. "You're quiet," he said over the roar of the blades. "I'm thinking about how far I've come from delivering lilies in the rain." "You're not that girl anymore." "Who am I?" "You're the woman who found my wife when my own men couldn't. You're the woman who stood in a garage while bullets flew and didn't break." His hand squeezed. "You're the woman I'm going to marry." The words hung between us. I turned to look at him, sure I'd misheard. "What?" "You heard me." He wasn't smiling. He was serious. "I told you, Elena, I don't let go of what's mine. And you are mine, not as a possession, as a partner, as a queen." "That's a big title for a florist?" "That's the right title for the woman who will help me rule." The helicopter landed on a rooftop in Palermo, Lombardo's territory. We were met by men with guns, but they didn't raise them. They recognized Gianluca and respected him enough to let us pass. Lombardo's home was a palace of marble and glass, all sharp angles and cold light. He met us in a study overlooking the city, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Don Rossi," he said, spreading his hands. "To what do I owe this pleasure?" Gianluca set the arrangement on Lombardo's desk. "A gift for your condolences." Lombardo looked at the flowers, at the card, at me standing quietly beside Gianluca. "And who is this?" "The woman who will be my wife," Gianluca said, voice carrying the weight of a pronouncement. Lombardo's smile faltered. "Congratulations. Though perhaps hasty given your recent loss. Isabella would have wanted me to be happy." Gianluca's tone was ice. "She would have wanted me to find someone strong enough to stand beside me. Someone who sees what others miss." Lombardo looked at me, really looked, and I saw the moment he understood, the moment he realized the flowers had never been about grief. They'd been about information, about who knew what and when. "You sent her to me," Lombardo said slowly. "The florist. The lilies. I sent her to everyone. You were the only one who knew what they meant." Lombardo's hand moved toward his desk drawer. Gianluca was faster. He had a gun in his hand, pointed not at Lombardo, but at the arrangement. "Don't. The bird of paradise is lovely, but the vase is wired. You move wrong, and this whole room becomes a memory." Lombardo froze. "You wouldn't." "I would. For her." Gianluca didn't look at me, but I felt the words like a brand. "You tried to take what was mine. You tried to kill my wife. You burned a man's livelihood to send a message. Here's my reply. Leave Naples. Leave Campania. Leave Italy, or the next arrangement I send will be for your funeral." He took my hand. We walked out. No one stopped us. In the helicopter, flying back to Naples, I finally spoke. "The vase wasn't really wired." "No," he smiled. But he didn't know that. And now he knows I'm willing to bluff with a straight face. "Is that what you were doing with me? Bluffing?" He turned to me, eyes serious. "No, that was a promise." We landed on the villa's rooftop as the sun set. Isabella was waiting, Rosa beside her, both safe. Gianluca hugged his wife, brief and fierce, then turned to me. "Elena Vance," he said formally. "Will you marry me? Not because I need you to, not because it's safe, but because I can't imagine my world without you in it." Isabella smiled. Rosa nodded. Luca gave a grunt that might have been approval. I looked at this man who had taken my ordinary life and turned it into something extraordinary, who had shown me that power wasn't just about force but about seeing clearly, who had trusted me with his secrets, his wife, his world. "Yes," I said, "but I have conditions." He raised an eyebrow. "Conditions?" "I want Marco's shop rebuilt. I want him protected. I want a seat at the table when decisions are made. And I want to keep delivering flowers." "Why?" "Because flowers are truth," I said. "And someone needs to speak that language in a world full of lies." He kissed me then, in front of them all, a claiming and a promise. Done. The wedding was small, private, and held in the same chapel where we'd buried an empty casket. Isabella stood as my witness, health recovered, smile genuine. Marco was there, arm in a sling from the fire, but his shop was already being rebuilt with Gianluca's money. My parents flew in from Verona, confused but happy, believing I'd fallen in love with a wealthy businessman who adored me. They weren't wrong. They didn't know the whole truth. I wore ivory silk, and in my bouquet, I carried white lilies for rebirth and red roses for passion, and a single bird of Paradise for defiance. Gianluca's ring was simple gold, but the earrings he gave me remained, a promise of protection. Our vows were private, just between us. He promised to protect me, to value me, never to let me become a ghost in his world. I vowed to stand with him, to see what others missed, to be his truth in a life built on shadows. Afterward, in the library that had become my domain, he gave me a gift. Not jewelry, not property, a ledger. Old, leather-bound, filled with names, dates, and transactions. This is the history of our family, he said. The real history, the one the law doesn't know about. Please read it to understand it, and to help me write the next chapter. I opened it and saw the first page. Rossi Family Ledger. Meet 3. The entries were in Italian. Cramped handwriting detailing shipments and payments, but also notes. Loyalty purchased today. Fear is better but more expensive. This is your legacy, I whispered. This is our legacy. He sat beside me. You said you wanted a seat at the table. This is where it starts. We spent the night reading together, him translating old dialects, me asking questions about patterns I saw. Who had been loyal? Who had been removed? Who had been given flowers for their funerals? It was the strangest wedding night in history, and it was perfect. 1 year later, the first real test of our partnership came on a Tuesday. Precisely 1 year after I'd knocked on Gianluca's door in the rain with lilies. A shipment was coming into the port, routine as mail delivery. But my system flagged an anomaly. A middleman had started using different phrasing in his emails. Small changes, the product. Instead of the beans, delivery window. Instead of arrival time. Linguistic stress markers, the kind I'd studied in the context of grief and deception, now applied to criminal logistics. I brought it to Gianluca as he was shaving. He's planning to divert the shipment, I said, showing him the transcripts on a tablet. He's nervous. The language is too precise, like he's rehearsing it. Gianluca wiped shaving cream from his jaw. You're sure? As sure as I can be without hearing his voice. But the pattern is there. Who is he? His name is Marco. I paused. Not our Marco, a different one. Works for the shipping company. Gianluca was quiet for a long moment. That's my cousin's son. Your cousin who died last year, supposedly. He set the tablet down. This boy was like a nephew to me. I gave him the job as a favor, and now he's betraying you. Or being used. Gianluca looked at me. We need to be certain. So we set a trap. Gianluca let the shipment proceed as planned, but moved up the timeline. Instead of arriving at midnight, it would come at 10. And instead of the usual warehouse, it would go to a decoy location. The cousin's son, young Marco, would have to act fast if he was going to divert it. And he did. At 9:45 p.m., he called the driver and changed the destination. At 9:50, he was waiting at the decoy warehouse with 3 men and a truck. At 9:55, Gianluca and I were watching from a surveillance van across the street. He's just a kid, I whispered. He's 23. Old enough to know better. Gianluca's voice was stern. Old enough to face consequences. The truck pulled in. Marco's men moved to unload it. And then Gianluca's men moved in. Luca leading the charge. Guns drawn, shouts filling the night. It was over in minutes. Marco was on his knees, hands bound, face white with terror. Gianluca left the van and walked over, steps measured and slow. I stayed in the truck, watching on monitors. Zio, Marco pleaded. Uncle, please. They have my mother. They said they'd kill her if I didn't. Who? Gianluca's voice was quiet, but it carried. The Lombardos. They never left. They're still here, in Naples. They said you were weak, that you cared more for your florist than your family. The crack of Gianluca's hand across Marco's face echoed through the warehouse. Not anger, correction. Don't you ever speak her name. Marco fell silent, blood trickling from his lip. Gianluca crouched down, eye level. Your mother is safe. She's been safe since yesterday. When I moved her to a location you didn't even know about. Because I suspected. I always suspect. He stood. But you chose them over family. That choice has consequences. He turned away. Luca stepped forward, but Gianluca held up a hand. No, not the usual. He looked at the truck, at coffee beans spilling from a torn bag, at white powder visible inside. You wanted to steal from me? Fine, you can keep it. All of it. Marco's eyes widened. What? You're going to work for the Lombardos now. You're going to tell them you succeeded. You're going to be my eyes inside their operation. Gianluca smiled. Or I will tell them you failed. And they will kill you. It was brilliant and brutal, and precisely what I'd come to expect from him. Mako nodded, desperate. Yes, anything. Gianluca walked back to the van and climbed in beside me. You were right, he said. The language was off. And now you have a spy in their camp. Now I have a spy. He pulled me onto his lap, arms wrapping around me. But I also have you, and you're the one who saw it coming. The final move came not with guns or flowers, but with words. Gianluca had been collecting evidence, financial records, intercepted communications, testimonies from men like Marco who'd been turned. It was enough to bring down the Lombardo family, not through violence, but through law. They're criminals, I said, confused when he explained. Won't they just kill anyone who tries to arrest them? Not if the arrest comes from within. He showed me a file. The Lombardos have a son, young, idealistic, studying law in Rome. He doesn't know what his father does. He thinks he's a legitimate businessman. You want to turn the son against the father. I want to give him the truth and let him choose. It was the most ruthless thing I'd ever heard because it wasn't about force. It was about destruction from the inside out. We flew to Rome. Gianluca arranged a meeting. Just a chance encounter, at a cafe near the university. He sent me in alone. The son, Matteo Lombardo, was handsome in a clean-cut way, eyes bright with youth's certainty. He smiled when I approached, confused but polite. Do I know you? He asked. No, but I know your father. I sat down without being invited. And I think you should too. I laid the file on the table. Photos, recordings, bank statements, evidence of murder, extortion, and trafficking. Matteo flipped through it, expression moving from confusion to horror to disbelief. This is fake, he whispered. Check the account numbers. Check the dates. Check the names of the victims. I leaned forward. Your father is a monster, Matteo, and he's going to fall. The only question is whether you fall with him, or whether you help bring him down. He looked up at me, tears in his eyes. Who are you? I'm the woman who delivers flowers. I stood. And I'm telling you that sometimes, the most beautiful things grow from the worst dirt. You can be better than him. Or you can be him. Choose. I walked away. Didn't look back. 3 days later, the news broke. Matteo Lombardo had gone to the authorities. He'd turned over everything, including evidence of his father's involvement in a recent murder. The elder Lombardo was arrested in his home, in front of his wife and daughter. The organization crumbled within days, each member turning on the others in desperate bids for leniency. Gianluca and I watched it unfold from the villa, news playing silently on the television while we worked in the library, building our future. That was cruel, I said quietly. It was necessary. He didn't look up from his papers. Cruel would have been killing them all. This way, only the guilty suffer. Matteo suffers. Matteo is free. He finally looked at me. You gave him that. I gave him a choice. You gave him the truth. He stood and came around the desk. That's more valuable than anything. We stood at the window, watching the sun set over Naples. The city looked peaceful from up here. Chaos and violence hidden beneath a veneer of beauty, like the flowers I arranged, like the life we lived. Tell me something, Gianluca said. If you could go back to that day in the rain, would you still knock on my door? I thought about it. About the fear, the confusion, the way my life had burned down around me. About the girl I'd been, delivering flowers to strangers, watching their grief from the outside. No, I said honestly. I wouldn't knock. His face fell. I'd kick it down, I finished smiling. Because I was always meant to be here. With you, he laughed, a real, genuine sound that filled the library. My fierce florist. Your queen. Always. He kissed me, hands framing my face. My queen. My love, my life. 6 months later, I stand in the makeshift flower shop we've built in the warehouse district, preparing arrangements for the city. Every funeral, every wedding, every apology, they all come through me now. And I know everything. My intelligence network is the most sophisticated in Naples, analysts and techs who ask no questions. I read financial records the way I once read flowers, seeing hidden meanings in transfers and deposits. I discovered that Antonio Moretti had been skimming from port fees for years, that Franco De Luca's fear wasn't about disloyalty, but about a debt he couldn't pay. That Carlotta's refusal of flowers wasn't about disrespect, but about a secret alliance she wanted to break, but didn't know how. I gave Gianluca the complete map he'd asked for. It showed not just enemies, but opportunities, not just threats, but leverage. Tonight, We're hosting a dinner party. Antonio Moretti, Franco De Luca, and Carlotta will be there. They'll sit at our table, eat our food, and drink our wine. And as they leave, each will receive a gift, a small arrangement from me, each one coded with a message only they would understand. Antonio holds black roses, I know. Franco holds white lilies. Forgiveness is possible. Carlotta's holds birds of paradise. Fly free. None of them says a word, but their faces tell me everything. They understand that the florist is now the queen, and the queen sees everything. Later, as we lie in bed, Gianluca traces the lines of my face in the darkness. You never asked me if I loved her, Isabella. Do you? Yes, but different from I love you. She was my past. You are my future. He kissed my forehead. She taught me how to be a king. You taught me how to be a man. And what am I? You are the thing that makes all of this worthwhile. He pulled me close. You are the reason I win. Now, standing on the cliff behind our villa, the place where he proposed, where we promised each other a future, the city spreads below us, our kingdom. The sea beyond is dark and endless, full of secrets and ships and the promise of more. You were right, he says, arm around my waist. About the lilies. About rebirth. I know. Will you still make arrangements? For us? For our family? I'll make arrangements for the whole city. I lean into him. Every funeral, every wedding, every apology, they'll all come through me, and I'll know everything. That's my girl. That's your queen. He kisses me, and the taste is salt and wind and forever. The sun sets and the stars come out, and we stand there, the king and his queen, the florist and the Mafia boss, the man who faked his wife's death, and the woman who found her. The wrong flowers for the bad wife, but the right messenger. The right messenger for the right man for the right woman for the right life. And the lilies bloom in the garden below, white and perfect, a symbol of everything we've survived and everything we've become.